should know, very bilingual. Blow shit out the frame, aim at the stack quo.
Peace, Super Heru family. I hope y'all should hear me. I'm definitely striving to get out of this blog talk relationship. However, we just found another site that sounds dope. But if you can hear me now, if anybody can hear me now, let me know. Can you hear it now? Can you hear me now? No, still, right? My volume's up on my phone. Yep. 1, 2. So y'all can hear me, right? Oh, great. Okay, great. Y'all can hear me, no doubt. Great. So we got over that hurdle. Thanks to the essence and the Creator for giving us all patience, you know what I mean, and deal with the craziness of technology. However, we are moving closer to retrograde, which starts on May 26th. So, you know, I guess they starting early. So long as everybody can hear me, you know, we'll just get right into it because this is the boss thing. Thank you, Cynthia, my Blog Talk client support, for hooking it up. So, like I said, this retrograde thing is starting quick. So, as it is doing that, you can already see what it's doing in communication. So we just want to make sure, thank you everybody for checking in on us as well. It's got a lot of calls from the homies through my private line. Sorry I can't click over while I'm on the jack. But I'm glad that everybody hears me, so we'll just get into it. Based on this being, or us being indigenous people, or us being classified as indigenous people, there's a lot of things that's going down, and in that it's opening up a lot of things for us as well. And one of the things we need to do to acknowledge too is that is a great gathering of minds and information that is coming based upon us moving ever so closer to establishing our right of passage in the world. It's funny, last night I was watching Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and, you know, basically, again, all of these movies be so much about the hidden history and who it pertains to, and in all of these shows, they always ask the same questions, like where did the people go, the ancient people go, the aliens, and all this other type of stuff. All of this stuff, like I said, is just very, very outside of the realm of what we really need to be focusing on, in my opinion. In my opinion, the best thing that we can focus on now is getting our own things together and not worrying so much about how other people are going to deal with it. What I think is, in my opinion, is one of the biggest issues that we have as a people is that we're constantly putting everybody else's needs and wants and what we feel they might feel about us behind us. And what that does is it creates a situation or a status quo that doesn't allow for people to actually grab on and receive the things that they should get, because they always patterning themselves behind what somebody else got. And this is what kind of led to the downgrade of the empire and things like that in the first place, which I'm sure you've heard me go in on about many times before. Yet, at this auspicious time, especially before this retrograde, we want to know and understand that this is the best time for us to afford ourselves the ability to look beyond that which is apparent. Because anything that is the apparent usually is not what it is. Anything that you see based on the laws of the universe, anything that you see in front of you is the conglomeration of a whole bunch of things you didn't see to get it there. So if you are looking at something in front of you and you are assuming that that thing is somehow a transcendent measure of, or you're just looking at that thing for what it is, then you're missing the bounty of what information can be brought to you. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, we want want to know that there are a lot of things that have happened historically, like I said, to us as a people specifically, that have, again, put us in a position to not only not trust each other, but I would go so far as to say to literally almost hate each other based upon our own mutual disgust of one another. You know what I'm saying? And based on that, we are at each other's throats to somehow get some sort of validation or acknowledgement from each other, while at the same time tearing each other down. These are all tenets and things that were learned to us or bred into us through an 85-year period specifically between the years of 17, well, I would say 1416 to about 1776. And then from about 1776 to 1779 was the foment of the actual agenda. And then from that came the destruction of our overall ability to communicate with one another. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, we have been lacking a basic decorum with one another ever since. And what I'm finding is that most of this is tied up into the fact that, like I said, not only we all discussed it, the fact that we're not even in a position to move ourselves out of it, but we're also in a position where we feel like there is no way out. And that is being amplified and exacerbated by all of the different confusion that you see coming from the people that's supposed to be giving you the most clarity. That's why a lot of it has went dormant now. You know what I mean? So when we speak of yourself, or we speak of something like the preamble, that we're really speaking of is, as the preamble citizens, the posterity, right, the original people, we're basically saying that we are, as a preamble, we are natural-born representatives of the free inhabitant citizens of the United States of America in the family of nations in General Congress assembled. You know what I'm saying? We appointed Washington to the executive office of the presidency in 1789, and as the first magistrate and CEO of the colonial plantation states/East States, the United States colonies were owned by him and took business control of the corporation, i.e. the artificial people and the aliens that existed on there, and integrated them into the states of America. So through his and a couple of other people's diligence, the 12 United Colonies became mandatory, and then through an introductory process were brought into the Electoral College under the jurisdiction of the Bay. Bay being B-E-A-H, which was a way that they used to spell it here in the States as well as B-A-Y-H. That's another way of spelling Bay. But the traditional Moorish spelling is always B-E-Y, right? That is where the electoral college came through, out of something called the House of Burgess. The Moors who met, they used to call them the Burger Moors. And so through the House of Burgess, they learned how to construct the elections as well as the selection of the federal corporation president according to the Amendment 12 to the Constitution of the United States of America, which we have to distinctly and constitutionally understand is different from the Constitution, Article 2. You see what I'm saying? So the federal government has one way of doing business, and the Republican form of government, which is tied up in the free preamble people, has a total different way of doing it. So when we talk about the estates and all of that, what we're really talking about are the plantations, two major plantations that were made out of Virginia. Specifically, that was the Halifax plantation and the Fairfax plantation. But colony and plantation, out of which came the Virginia Tobacco Company, out of which came the 13 colonies, or the corporate state that we know as England, which only regulated and only meant the 13 colonies here situated on the northeastern coast of America, of North America, whereas Albion or Albion represented the place that we now today know as England. Everything was switched after Reconstruction. So the prohibition against slavery and involuntary servitude, right, which was the obvious purpose of the 13th Amendment, was not to forbid, well, is to, let's say, forbid all shades and conditions of African slavery. African slavery, though, is not and has never been, has to be distinctly different from what we call Negro slavery. Negro slavery were those who were supplanted and completely, those who were supplanted out of their so-called birthright, you understand? But were made to adopt the term Negro to represent themselves, right? These people that we're talking about as that basically represent the 6,000 years ago part of the Neanderthal people, which are not the descendants of what we call Adam Kadmon, or Atum Re, or Atum Kadmon Re, right? This dude that we're talking about under this Negro slavery that they got popping, right, is basically the man that was born from the dust. See, Genesis talks about the creation of three different beings. You know what I'm saying? So the one that was made of the dust of the ground was made to be the beast and the bird, and that was the Neanderthal, right? Alone and only was in the mind of those who understood that this beast was manifested out of, again, that horrible thing that happened to us in our history that we'll refer to as the Jacobian experiment, or we can call the fall of Lucifer. You know what I'm saying? So there is a difference in terms of how we're supposed to work and deal with our thing. As preamble natural-born citizens, you know what I'm saying, and free persons and all of that, being Moors and all of that, we're not supposed to be dealing with certain things like what they call a direct tax. So a direct tax is a property tax, a cap tax, or a captation tax, or what's called an ad valorem tax. An ad valorem is like any statutory tax that they create, as well as a tax on real estate. Another tax that they try to flip you in and get you caught up with are excise taxes. An excise tax is basically a payment, right, or a fee placed on the manufacturer's sale or merchandise upon the license to pursue certain trades and commodities. You know what I'm saying? But we, as those who represent we the people, the Lenabe, right, the preamble citizens of the United States of America, are not subject to that. You know what I'm saying? Then you have the income tax, which is a tax on persons artificially constructed. This is the tax that they place on the Cecily Trust, the 14th Amendment citizens. Income. You see what I'm saying? The license tax is a price paid to the municipal government authority for any certificate, or the document itself which gives the permission, which is a license tax being defined as a exacted or a certain term of privileges for carrying the right or trademark of a particular corporation. You see? So, essentially, when we're building on this, we're talking about the difference in terms of who we are and what they are. So we already bust down the fact that all of this really started or came out of the Fairfax, that came out of the Providence plantations, Halifax and Fairfax colonies and plantations that grew into the Virginia Tobacco Company, that at one time, by 1667, there were so many indentured white slaves there that they had to arm, that the Moors created militias specifically to patrol up and down the East Coast and put them back into bondage, meaning those so-called Negro slaves, now designated as white, who were now transferred over and were now trying to, through the Freemasonry thing, being raised up. So those that didn't go through the craft or through the system like that was then put under the jurisdiction of the corporate powers and then broken into municipalities. Those municipalities, at the time that this happened, between 1774 and 1776, there was no United States government. You understand? That didn't exist at this point. So within those years, somebody had to take account for somebody else. So really, they was robbing Peter to pay Paul, because on one end, they owe George and them from across the water all of that money, especially from the 1666 Cestui Trust that they defaulted on, that they were now trying to put anybody up under so that way they could pay the debt back on that. And then they had to still look out and pay us back for whatever it is we was doing, because we were the only ones who could acknowledge them and free them by putting them under our jurisdiction. This is why the United States will never and can never actually break their bond with Morocco, because that's the only country that stopped them and recognized them in the world, because they saw that as an extension of Moorish dominion, meaning that they were under us. So in other words, the corporation United States, as far back as the first magistrate CEO of the federal government in the United States, or let's say President George Washington, borrowed money from its superior association, United States, which was us, right, for the colonies, that they could join the war for their independence. This, though, became a delinquency and went into default again by 1787, which was the first recorded 1788 was the first recorded bankruptcy of them. That's why by 1789, they couldn't make Washington the president until 91, swore him in really until 1791, when they could actually capitulate and pay back the debt, because by that time, 1791, 79, they had already been processing Moors, undeclared Moors, who were now denationalized, and processing them as Negroes for about the past maybe 11 years before that. So they were already creating a system where they could get rid of the people that was domestic here, meaning us, that were foreign to them, but they could bag up based upon us falling out with each other, based upon us now upholding the tenets of our original government. You know what I'm saying? So the slaveholding, so by the end of the so-called Civil War, the slaveholding corporate states were defeated, and the property, i.e. the Negro white persons, was then seized and transferred over to the Federal Corporation United States for management. These Caucasian Negroes did not have citizenship, and the Masonically guided United States representatives did not allow them to be congressionally naturalized in accordance with the Constitution of the United States of America and General Congress assembled Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of 1787. Not to be confused with the 14th Amendment naturalization of 1868, which was 81 years later. So the naturalization process that first began in this country was created to naturalize the, i.e., Negro Caucasian property that was being made over and transferred into ownership or management under the United States. That would then create a pseudo-citizenship for them, so that way they could manage, so long as they kept them away from the fruit in the garden, which represented the true empire of the country, which was us. I hope that made sense for everybody. See, what we are under is the administrative corporation federal government of or in the United States government, which is also the municipal corporate state government in or of the Republican state government, which is then a front for the municipal incorporation, cities, towns, etc., within the common law, within colorable law. But within the common law, counties are not citizens of the United States. However, these persons who owe permanent allegiance to the preamble constitutional fold, i.e. the Confederated Congress, i.e. the Societas Republicae Ilemanicanos Estados, they owe perpetual fealty to us, because we are the ones that put up the money to free them. And then in return, they could not go back to England, so they wanted to set up a form of England here, which is why we call the Eastern Seaboard New England. Because the word revolve means to get back to, and that means that ain't we speaking English today? So who gave them the right to do all this or whatever? Well, look at King Charles II. See, the line of the Carolingian dynasty of the Moors from Albion goes all the way back really to Charles goes back even further than that. But by the time that Carlos Quint, a.k.a. Charles V, was actually able to marry into the line of descent through the Inca, he became the first foreign Moor to be inducted into a family over here, other than Rebecca with the Hardisani, a.k.a. the Iroquois, with that whole fiasco with John Smith. But specifically, he was a foreign Moor who married into, brought the European nobility into through South America, and then through that, he was able to move his way up. So by the time his descendant, Charles, created the country of what we know as North and South Carolina, you got to understand, Moors were there for over 300,000 years ago, from the Neolithic period. So he basically used his family's modus operandi was to come over and reunite and put himself in it. And when he did that, he then had to create a means for them or his people to receive money or to get bread. So what he did was he created the Moorish Fairfax Grant, or what the white man would call the Fairfax Grant, by King Charles II. So Fairfax and Culpeper were the names closely linked. Here we go. This is what the Moor blessed me with. He said Fairfax and Culpeper are the names closely linked with the formation of Virginia. The Fairfax Grant, which shaped the development of Northern Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley for a century, was the political payoff of allies of the king during the Civil War in England in the mid-1600s. The Puritans under Cromwell won the English Civil War and controlled England for a decade. The victorious Puritans executed Charles I first on January 30th, 1649. 1648, usually the old-style calendar. His son declared himself to be the next king, Charles II, but had to flee for France with his few supporters. While in France, the king in exile had few resources, but he claimed the right to reward his allies the grants of the lands in Virginia. In September 1649, Charles II granted the entire northern neck of Virginia, all of the land between Rappahannock and the Potomac rivers, to Lord Culpeper and 6 other supporters. Right? It is easy for the king to grant those lands which were far, far away. Besides, Charles II needed a short-term loyalty for more long-term revenue, because it was the Moors over here through the Carolingian dynasty that allowed the grant to go down, so that way they can receive more profit and lands when he was put back on the throne. These were the Moors that put him back on the throne when he went back to England. So that way, by the time Charles V came through, he was now already inundated with this side of how this side of the world did business. And it was through him that, again, by the time of George and them, remember, George is the successor of him. So this means that the original grants that was between the original Moors from here that set up what would be the first plantations and colonies that they would export their indentured servants here to, was again granted by somebody who had already married into this side of the empire. This is why the British had to acknowledge the Moors specifically, and vice versa. So if we look in the pecking order, it was the Societas Republicanas Americanos at the top. Then it was the Almoracan Empire. Then under them, it was the Ottoman, or let's say the Turkish Empire, right? The Osmanli Beys, right? The Mystic Turks. Then under them, you would have the British. Then under the British, you'd have everybody else. Let me start over. Societas Republicanas Americanos, then the Almoracan Empire, then the Osmanli Empire of the Mystic Turks, then the Holy Roman Empire, then the British. So when every time one got bumped off, the other one moved up and went back to refortify the one that went down. But by the time of the 1914s now, the Britain had already fell into its jurisdictional issues based upon them now trying to take over from the Turks, and the Turks not wanting to give it up. That's when they talk about the old man of the West, symbolized by Turkey. Right? Then, this is the one that brought in the right of Montezuma with Charles V. So this says, in order, the most potent sire, to convey your majesty just the conception of the great extent of this noble city of Teotihuacan, and of the many rare wonderful objects it contains, of the government and dominions of Moctezuma, the sovereign, and the religious rites and customs that prevail in order and exist in this, as well as the other cities appertaining to his realm. It will require the labor of many accomplished writers and much time for the completion of the task. I shall not be able to relate even 100th part of what could be told respecting these matters, but I will endeavor to describe the best in manner in my power, and what I myself have seen, and I am perfectly as I must succeed in the attempt, and fully aware of the account will appear so wonderful as to be deemed scarcely worthy of credit, since even we who have seen these things with our own eyes are yet so amazed to be unable to comprehend their reality. But your majesty may be assured that if there is any fault in my recollection, either in regard for the present subject, blah, blah, blah. So he's saying that Moctezuma's kingdom was just next level, right? Before I begin to describe this great city and others already mentioned, it may well, for better understanding that of the subject, to say something of our configuration of Mexum, in which they are situated, in it being the principal seat of Moctezuma's power. This province is in the form of a circle, surrounded on all sides by lofty, rugged mountains. Its level surface comprises the area of about 70 leagues in circumference, including 2 lakes, overspread nearly the whole valley, being navigated by boats more than 50 leagues around. That's as big as any European boat that you see on Game of Thrones or anything else. Basically, he goes on, the great city of Tehuantepec, or Mexum, a.k.a. Mexico, is situated in this salt lake, and from the mainland to the denser parts of it, and he goes in further. The city has many public squares, which are stipulated markets and other places for buying and selling. There is one square twice as large as that of the city of Salamanca, another Moorish city. You see what I'm saying? Where Moors would go and learn the occultism. That's where the Syrian Moors, who are part of the Hashemite dynasties, where we get the game of Assassin's Creed from. This is where they would take them to train, in Salamanca. Salamanca was like the Tibet of the Moors. So, again, this is showing you, boom, here you go. They make another comparison to the Moors, all of which form the actual causeways, 2 spears length and width. The city is as large as Seville or Cordoba. Its streets, I speak of principal ones, are very wide and straight. Some of these, and all our inferior ones, are half land and half water, and are navigated by canoes. All the streets at intervals have openings through which the water flows, crossing from one street to the other. So imagine you walking down a block, and every other block there's a stream that flows between one block to the next. They said that they had hanging gardens like that was seen in Babylon, meaning that these gardens were on top of the artifices and the pyramids and all of that. He goes on and on and on, and basically by the end of it, he says, look, man, you need to ally yourself with these people because these Moors got it popping. So many and various were the ceremonies and customs observed by those in service of Moctezuma that more space than I can spare would be required for the details, as well as a better memory than I have to recollect them, since no sultan or other infidel lord of whom any knowledge now exists ever had so much ceremony in his court. So right there, he just allied himself and told you that Montezuma's court, or the Moors in Montezuma here in America, were Moors, because he compared them to a sultan or another infidel lord. That's either a sultan, an emir, a caliph, or somebody Moorish. This is why Carlos Quint, a.k.a. Charles V, married into the dynasty through Montezuma. Cortez and them, when they finally came through and did their thing, they basically just started breaking everything up. That's when the Spanish came over and then kicked the British side out. So then Charles and them people moved further up to the lands of Virginia, where they had slaves, meaning Negro white people that was already there doing all the work for them. And they just integrated with them. And people like George Washington and these people grew up on that plantation, all protected or under the Halifax Providence plantation system that all of the so-called modern states basically came out of. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. Okay, got that one. You know what I'm saying? So let's recap. There are estates and there are states. An estate is something that cannot be broken. A state is something that can be occupied. Your original estates that existed here were here from time immemorial. Therefore, when we speak about people like Montezuma and the Incas, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, the Yamasi, the whoever you talk about, what you got to do is stop drawing a fence in your mind of Indian, black, Negro, colored, and just look at all these people as Moorish people. Because all of these people were noble, and to be a Moor, you got to be noble. So in that, you're what's called highborn. So these highborn nobles that were autochthon, that were already here, already had a system that's in place that was rivaled by all other systems in the world, being that this is ancient Egypt over here. So essentially, in order for the British or our foreign brothers, meaning Moors from Europa, to come over here and get something popping, what they needed to do was find a way to integrate their slaves into a free system. You cannot bring a slave into a system that's designed for you to be free. So what you got to do is create a colorable system, a system that is not based on law, but is based on the appearance of law to govern these slaves that were in a system. That system that we today call colonial, right? Colon meaning the middle part of the body, right? Or colonial being to occupy. They could not live like me and you because they were under the jurisdiction and literally owned by whoever was the king of Europa who brought them over here. We were not under that king of Europa's jurisdiction because he was the same complexion as us, and he was trying to find ways to marry into our noble clans that was over here. Because over here we were all kings, over there they all fighting to kill each other to be one king. So what he wanted to do, George, or the Moors of Al Europa, they wanted to bring their Caucasoid serfs to come over here to do business. Because like I just read to you, under Charles II, he was his father, Charles I, was beheaded, and the so-called Puritans were able to rule London or whatever for about 10 years. So within that period, he was in exile. Where do you think he came? He came over here. And the Moors from what we now today call North and South Carolina, who really represent what's called the Carolingian dynasty, were some of the Moors that helped put him back on power over there. So to reward those Moors, the Moors over here who helped put him back in power over there, he granted them the right to be able to create states or colonies or plantations for them to be able to make money off of the slaves, i.e. the Caucasian people today that we call the colonialists, the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the immigrants. These people now were forced slaves under the jurisdiction of these so-called Lord Proprietors or Beys of the colony. These were the Moorish-looking people who dressed in the manner that George Washington and the rest of these niggas dressed. Only thing is, they were Moors, meaning Asiatic or meaning darker of skin, melanated. But they had a practice of using Caucasian slaves, raising them up, and using them to then go break other Moors in their dominions by proxy. So these plantations, one was called Providence, the other one was called Halifax, the other one was called Fairfax. These three plantations made up what we call the the state of Virginia or what will even go farther to say New England. Out of those states from 1661 to 1666, you had a lot of people who were trying to escape, meaning slaves who were on the colonies breaking away, meaning Caucasian serf slaves, Negro slaves running off the plantation. So much so by 1677, there were armed militias, Moors, who were traveling up and down the East Coast, grabbing these white people up and bringing them back to the plantations in what we now call Virginia or the Eastern Seaboard. This is where people like Crispus, where you think people like Crispus Attucks and Peter Salem and Prince Whipple, and where you think these people come from? You know what I'm saying? They just tell you, oh, Crispus Attucks was the first one who got popped in the Civil War. But they didn't say he was a slave. Some people say he was a slave. Some people say he was a merchant, right? But of course they're going to say he's a slave because they want to make you believe that anybody that's dark-skinned in this place is a slave, and that's the opposite. Remember, the word emancipate means to transfer ownership. So because that's why the Civil War started. That's why the Revolutionary War started, because they shot a free national. You can't shoot no free national of the Republic and not expect to get in no beef with us. You understand? Isn't it funny that the first person shot in the Revolutionary War was Crispus Attucks, right? Right? Think about that. Most people will tell you the story, he got shot and then the war started. So isn't it coincidental that Crispus Attucks was the first man who set off the Revolutionary War? He got shot. Do you know that the first man who got shot in the Civil War was a black man named Nick Biddle? What kind of coincidence is that? How is it that if niggas wasn't the ones that was in charge of nothing, how come they always the first ones to get shot? There's huge books you could get on this. They were white and they were slaves. Get another book called The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. Get another book called Black Masters, White Slaves. Get another book called Black Confederates. Get another book called John Drew, Confederate Cherokee. Get another book called Megan and the White Man. Get another book called Iceman Inheritance. Get another book called Chosen People of the Caucasus, or even the 13th Tribe. All of these books tell you that these people have been enslaved longer than anybody else on the planet. But because we as black people, we have a short attention span, we think that this whole idea of us being a slave for 400 years is true. Do the math, man. If we declared our free national constitution in 1774 and there was not a United States government until 1791, then who was running the government? Who was the one who freed them if they was breaking away from Europe? That don't make sense. How can you be in bondage longer than the country existed? The United States, as we know it, is only 238 years old. How you been in bondage for 400 years? Where's the math in that? Here's another question. If chattel slavery began in 1779, right? If chattel slavery started in 1779, right, and ended in 1865, right? How have you been in bondage for 400 years when that's only 85 years? That don't make sense. And I'm being generous because we know, based on real history, that the Civil War started amongst the Cherokee nations, meaning the Moorish nations that could no longer use their free national names. So they started using their tribal names as their national names. That's why you don't start to see the word, all of these different so-called Indians and all of that until way later. Everything was reconstructed in reconstructional history. Everything. From the way you even look at a map is wrong. Next time you look at a map, turn it upside down. Then you'll be looking at how it's supposed to look. You don't even know where you at. We fell because we were divided amongst ourselves when we chose to enact the first free national constitution in the world. The only and the first document in the world in modern times that said that all men were created free and equal, right? That was the Articles of Confederation. That was a product of the several states. You are a remnant of the several states, which is why you have a Circle 7 Quran. Because the 7 states that walked out represented the quorum, the original states of the several 48-state, 13-zone empire that existed here from Alaska to Chile. So when that happened, the slave advocate, who had no people to build up his country, needed somebody to help him do the labor to create the United States. So he tricked those Moors to come into his union, but he didn't tell them that once they came into his union that he would have to redesignate them as a form of property in order for him to keep his union, to pay that money he had to pay back to George. So when these white people are talking to you and they say, "Oh, nigga, just go back to Africa," you got to really think of what they're telling you. If you understand that, first of all, the word Africa in Masonic law is a code for Earth, then they telling you to go back to Earth, meaning that you're not on Earth right now, meaning that you're in a different dimension, because you are. Western society was built on the back of the Moors, who were dethroned by the Moriscos and their Jesuit overlords, and have been perpetually working to wipe all traces of your existence off the planet. And it's niggas helping them do it. Again, the crackers, and they already know who and what you are. They not really debating that. They know who the real Moors are and who the fake ones is. They bought in their time because they know that they got enough fake ones in the mainstream to be able to pump the bullshit and make people feel like, what's wrong? And make people feel like they grasping the tail of the elephant and they telling people they riding it. So our main responsibility, one, is to, after we decipher what happened, how to use this history as a means of basic application to get out of our position. See, people can tell you, "Oh yeah, the white people came here and they did this and this, that." But how could they come and do that when they thought that the world was flat and it was down in the bubonic plague, and everything that they learned in Europe, they learned from the Moors. Even the European Moors learned from the Moors over here. That's why after Granada, they came straight here, because Granada was our console over there, being that they wanted to come back and be amongst the Moors and be a part of the Almoroccan Empire. So, if you're going to be a Moor and you want to be a Christian, then be a Coptic, man. Go to the original of what it is. Be an Axumite. Because then you can still be in your Moorish habit and do your thing. But if you're in a position where you are pledging the allegiance to an inferior God, then you have already denationalized yourself spiritually. So mentally or physically should be nothing, should be no problem. You know what I'm saying? And everything is done to you because we don't follow our original customs. We have adopted customs by living in the United States for so long. We're now understanding that the United States is actually a corporate government laid on top of the original country. So real estate is not real. Estates are real. You see what I'm saying? A state can be a state of mind or a state of being. But based upon people not understanding that, they have made themselves trustees to their own estate. Because the Providence, Halifax, and Fairfax plantation, a.k.a. New England, that was set up to protect the rights of the slave, they have now convinced you that you were that. So when they say Negro, they're thinking of you. But you were never that. That's what their designation was. In regards to how much they want to do it and get away from it, it's still who they are. because the Negro technically is a Neanderthal, and you don't descend from Neanderthal. See, what it is that, like everything else, we just dealt with it and got so far away from the actual truth that we just decided to live in the lie and make the best of it. And then we took the nigger or the Negro thing and started freaking it to the point where we made it cool almost to be ignorant. We made it almost socially acceptable to not know certain things and create our own form of language. Look at what white people are doing with the word twerk right now. They're doing the same thing they did with the word twerk that they did with bling bling, right? But we remember that the twerk team and 3 little girls that was out there doing anything, they the ones who first, in the sense of what I remember, coined that, them and the Yin Yang twins, right? But they have now turned that thing into a multi-million-dollar thing, especially now you got Miley Cyrus doing it. Pretty soon it's going to be in the dictionary, right? And now you're going to have international twerking contests with white girls and Latin Asian girls and everything else. And just like they do with the stripper stuff, the black girls going to just have to do it just because. Something else you created that they done took from you because they disassociated you from your body. When you don't have your nationality and your inheritance and birthright straight and don't know who and what your God really is, you in limbo. So like I said, when a cracker tell you go back to Africa, what he really telling you is wake up, nigga, get back on earth. Go back to your country. But they got you thinking, but we still so caught up, we still thinking Africa is the continent over there, knowing damn well that Africa is just a conglomeration of the word of Mexican and the word Africa. You are in Africa right now. Anything west of Mali, according to Piri Reis, was Africa. So that means this is northwest, southwest Africa, if you want to use that term. But we know that the word Africa, the A, is really a conglomeration of the word of Mexican, the A-M-E. And then we take the R-I-C-K from Africa, and there you go. Now you're in America. But what do they tell you? Oh, nah, we named it after Amerigo Vespucci. Then how come you don't have Amerigo Vespucci Day? You know what I'm saying? It's just the nigga that named the whole thing. How come Columbus got the day and he don't? How come you ain't named it Columbia? Technically, that's the name of Washington, D.C., the new name of Washington, D.C. They renamed it New Columbia. You can check that out on the internet, too, and you can see. But if that's the case, then how come he don't have his day? How come there no statues for him? Because he didn't exist. Just like Benjamin Franklin, the person they call him Benjamin Franklin didn't exist. That's Benjamin Bay. What kind of coincidence is it that when you go and check Benjamin Bay's crib, it happened to be sitting on the same spot that Benjamin Franklin's crib was at? Oh, what, they were roommates? That's how they flip in American history this month. So again, when you're dealing with moral history, you're dealing with direct things. You're dealing with real shit, real things that happen. When you're dealing with African or Pan-African history, you're dealing with the heights of your aesthetic civilization, but you're not getting into nothing direct, meaning that they're not going to tell you how to reestablish your tribal government now. Meaning that you could study ancient Egypt all you want, but they ain't going to let you, but based on you studying that, they ain't going to acknowledge you being a direct descendant from them people. Even the Egyptians who was living in Egypt today know that they not the original Egyptians that was there. They even know that. All them people got there between the end of the 1800s and the early 1900s. Remember, Egypt used to be part of Sudan. They done split the Sudan into the north and south now. Same way they did America. Same way they do any country that they're trying to polarize. So this craziness you seeing happen in Turkey right there, they doing that because they don't want you to be able to reestablish yourself and then pull out them ancient treaties where the Turks got to come and protect you. China doing it. I just seen an advertisement on TV about black women now trying to get with Chinese women. What I notice even with that is they always pairing you, black woman, with somebody else, man. You know what I'm saying? They always pairing you with somebody else. Oh, you'll do better with him. You'll do better with them. Because they want you to enhance everybody else's genetics except your black man. They want you to turn your sons gay. They want you to be so upset at the father for whatever he's not giving you child support that then you create a system where you perpetuate it back to him on making your son do things that you didn't really want him to do, but you allow him to do that. And some women are doing this subconsciously. Like when you think about child molesters, first thing you think about is a man. That's wrong. Because that means that all of the women that's doing that is now what? They free and clear because niggas people don't even do that. Unless it's like a child, people might have some sympathy in that regard, but traditionally not. That's like saying a man can't be raped or whatever by a woman and all of that. There's a different forms of rape and psychological and physical intrusion, man. And not everybody is as strong mentally as everybody else. So certain things that we see, men, again, are trained here to believe, especially what they call black men. Oprah just put something out on TV the other day about dark-skinned girls not wanting to be black. And I feel that, you know what I'm saying, to a certain degree. But what I am seeing when I watched it was the fact that what they have done is that they have made you associate the term black with your skin color. When the black that you don't want to be is based on the designation and the chattel property and the thing that go and the false history that go with that. That's not registering with the child because the child knows that it's something else. It comes from something more divine than that. But because you got niggas, these black power people that's always thrusting black down your throat, you see what I'm saying? They are taking it out of context and now are assaulting themselves based on a skin pattern. When what's supposed to be happening is that the black revolutionaries is supposed to be telling them, no, baby, it's not your black skin that you have the issue with. It's the social designation that goes with being registered and recognized as black, because that does not exist. That is a anathema connected to the word Negro that really never was you. That was really the name that they was using for the Pilgrims and the serfs and everybody else. So when they say our people suffer from the lack of knowledge, they're really not lying, because it's the lack of understanding of what's happening to us as to why we're in the situation we're in. And it's being exacerbated by other people who are presuming to be your leaders or the people you aspire to. And really all these niggas is doing is just watching what you doing. They watching what you doing. They go on YouTube to try to see what you doing. So that way whatever you think is going to put themselves above you, then so be it. Okay, you think I'm in the Illuminati? You think black people's Illuminati now? Now I'm going to do all these videos that's mad satanic and shit even more now to make niggas think I'm that, so that way I have more power over them. So this way I'm producing the imagery that the devil want me to do to mislead my people, but at the same thing I'm taking some illusionary power out of it too. Anybody talking to you about, again, getting money and flipping shit or whatever in real estate or whatever, and these niggas don't have no national idea, no national identity, they setting you up. I'm telling you. Because everything is already laid out for us. We just gotta do it in a favorable fashion. But that means we gotta let go of certain things too. We got to let go of this universal, sensationalized idea that we all going to get there together. That's not true. So we got to get out of these altruistic notions that somehow we just going to get it right and we going to be able to all live together and all of that. That don't happen. You just honor your ancestors when you refer to them by names that was given to you by the people who conquered them, because those names ain't going to be that. So if you're from the continent of Africa, you're not an African, you're whatever country you come from in Africa. Yes. You understand? When you ask somebody, where they from Africa, where they come from, they're going to tell you a country. That's because they understand nationality, albeit most of their countries are very poor or whatever, but at the same token, they still have a flag that regards to what represents the fact that they fought for it. Right? The problem is that a lot of them have bought into the lie as well and have turned their backs on the Al-Moroccan Empire as well. A lot of their tribal leaders still remember, but a lot of them ain't. You know what I'm saying? However, like I said, when you keep using, see, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, you could be what you are, but the more you put yourself to be somebody else, the more you're going to be at the beck and call of other people. So if I copyrighted the name, George, and your name is Stephen, and then I get rid of all of the people who remembered that your name was Stephen, and then I created a book that told you that your name was George, the people who you grow up with now is going to start to refer to you as George. So that when you start telling people your name is Stephen, they start saying, oh, you bugging, that ain't your real name. You see what I'm saying? Now apply that to the word African. And you see what I'm saying. When you get into the Bible, you don't see that word. So what do Moors do to get around that? They say, oh, well, we can't fuck with the Bible because that shit is all Christian and all that anyway. Be a fool if you want to. And when I say that our people won't let go of the slave labels, this is what's holding it up. Because we can't get out of our mind that we are something so magnificent yet so simple. I met dinner the other day, and there was this brother sitting across from me with a Eurozord chick, and we eating dinner or whatever. So by the time I get ready to leave, I go to the bathroom. So when I come back, I see that the dude is talking to Selena. So when I come up to him, he says, "Yo," he said, "Nah, I just want to say peace to you, man. It's like he said, I was just, bugging at your tarbouche." So I said, "Oh, you know what it is. Thanks for not calling it a hat." This dude said, "No, I'm from," he said, "I know, of course I know what it is. I'm from Morocco." I said, "Oh, word." I said, "What part, the Rabat?" He was like, "Yeah." He said, "How you know?" I said, "Because all of the Moors that look like us are from the Rabat. Based on El Ghawi Pasha." He said, "You know about El Ghawi Pasha?" I said, "Do I know? That's my relative." I said, "He's a Moor just like I'm a Moor. We all related." So then I was watching. So as we bounced, the whole time he's there looking at my fez. And then it dawns on me, I know he's bugging because, see, when they come over here, a lot of them feel like they can't be in their garb. They can't wear their fez and none of that type of stuff. This dude just my complexion, you know what I'm saying, and all of that. But a lot of them come over here and they put that aside, you know what I'm saying, to be what they think that this country wants them to be. But what we are showing them, just by being us, this is why the prophet said, just do you, and all things will come. By doing me, he's saying, no, you can be in your national habit here and have the immunities and protection that exist for you here. How is it you born in the place, in the Rabat and all of that, where they wear feathers, all that from birth? Then you come over here and then you don't wear it, right? But then you now look at the contrast though. I'm now born here under the false jurisdiction of who and what I am, right? Don't have no knowledge of the feds. Wind up getting it and wearing it with no problem. This is the contrast, the dichotomy that I'm trying to illustrate to the listeners to show that it's better for you to be who and what you always are. Because the only way out is through the way you came in. And if you were born here and you are nationalized here, then that means you are aligning yourself and repatriating back to what it is you really never left. Only thing is you were convinced that it didn't apply to you somehow. So Again, I say all of that to say this is the time, and pretty soon the cleanup is coming, and they're going to start sweeping up all of these fake ones, and you're only going to be left with the real. So you can claim to be, let's say, a Kemite or whatever, but that still means that you're foreign from here. Because again, Kem was over there. Egypt is over here. So they say, oh, well, the Kemites wasn't using vowels. That's true. But the Mayans was. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. Something I wanted to share with you guys. Excuse me. Let's go like this. Of course, now I want it. I can't find it. It's something I wanted to share with everybody about kingdom, what sparked me to do the knowledge to it, and the connection over here. The connection to what we call the Moabites, or the Moabitic people, and why it said that they asked permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to come back over here. They did that for a couple of reasons, but specifically, it's also tied into the lineage of who the Moabites are and why they asked permission from the Paharus over here to come back over here to do that. Think about that. If you're gonna go stay at your grandfather's house, you don't call your if you're gonna go stay in somebody's, let's say your friend's house, you don't call your other friend and ask to stay in his house. You ask the person whose house you're going to stay in. So why would Moors from over there ask Moors from over there to come over here to set up shop? If we are taking into account that when we talk about the pharaohs of Egypt, we're talking about people across the water, when really we're talking about you and me right here. One of the biggest kings or greatest kings of Moab was a Moor named King Mesha, who was the son of Chemosh, right? Who was the king of Moab, who was also called the Dibonite. It's actually the Djibouite. This is where we get the country Djibouti. Remnants of them people is connected to them as well. But these people created these Moabites. When they started to come back, they needed to leave almost a marker as to where they were, how and by who you need to come back over to the promised land, but to the great land beyond the sea, right? So Mesha, they created these things called Moabite stones or Moab stones. And essentially Mesha, who was the ruler of Moab, which was east of the Dead Sea, right? In, let's say, the mid-9th century, let's say BC. He's a contemporary of Jehoshaphat, who was the king of southern Judah. And then the other king at the time was the northern kingdom of Israel. So Mesha, who in the Bible, like I said, was recorded in 2 Kings. When you read the book of Kings, it talks about all the different empires and Moorish dominions that began to migrate back and forth from the old world, meaning from over there, over here, and then from over here to over there, and vice versa. Right? That is what leads into, like I said, the Exodus, when you have all of these people basically leaving now and going back to their original land. or the Great Dispersal, when Nebuchadnezzar and them knocked everybody out. So the Moabite stone was discovered in Deban, Jordan, right? And the Messianites, or Mesha in them, were also, there were a lot of Mithritic priests and stuff that existed in Moab under Mesha. Now, Mithra was symbolized by the bull, and its colors were red, black, and white. Mithra was also the god of the air, and it was alleged that a lot of the Moabites were dealing with, like they said a lot of those drawings from Da Vinci and all of those were based on older models and designs that the ancients had been using from time immemorial. One of the greatest kingdoms that they built was a place called Petra. And when you look at the main one of the main castles or whatever in Petra, you'll see that it looks exactly like if you used to walk down Upper East Side, right? Coincidence. Walk up the Upper East Side and look at a lot of the brownstones, and then look at the statues and the buildings that they carved out of the mountain in Petra, and you'll see the influence of where these buildings are coming from. Now, the interesting thing about it is some of the Moabite stones were found over here. There was a Moabite stone found over here at the mouth of the Mississippi, which means that Mesha and the Moabites, when they came over here, a lot of them settled along the Mississippi, which is why the prophet said when the European came here, he found Moors all up and down the Mississippi. So also when you look at the Petra complex and the mountains they built in it, they did a movie called Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he goes into one of the main buildings, where he meets the old Templar, Joseph of Arimathea, where he gets the Grail. That's because the Grail line was the line of the Moab based upon the descent of King Petra, right? But here's the funny thing. Descent from that kingdom. So look at what we have. We have Jordan, we have the bull, we have air, we have Mithra, we have guide stones, which are these Moabitic stones, and then we have the Grail, which represents the Merovingian line, or the line of Yehoshua, or Emmanuel, as we say. So when we look at the descent now, or the line of the Nabatean royal house that came out of and was around Petra, the first patriarch was a man named Zadok. Zadok's name that we would know him by was John the Baptist, who was also known as Cyrus or Jarius priest, or Jarius, who was a priest in the Mithritic rites as well. He married a chick named Acacia, right, which also brings in the acacia plant, or the acacia leaf that the Masons use, but it's spelled Euchasia. Euchasia, right? She also came from the royal house of the Hasmonean, and she was also known as Prince Ania. They both had a baby named Lydia. Lydia was also the name of a kingdom that she was the princess of, called Lydia, or Lydia, Lydia. The Lydians or the Lydians were the first people to coin money in the ancient world over there, based upon, again, the minting techniques and all of that stuff that had been traveled back and forth from the time of the Great Flood, and even before that, based upon the Garden of Eden and all that stuff always being ancestry located over here. That's why it took so long for the Europeans to remember that they could come back over here, if not through us. So this chick Lydia, though, she also had another name that we refer to and know in history as Magdalene. Marian Magdalene. who met another dude named Yehoshua. You see what I'm saying? From the house of David, who then give birth to the Grail line, again, that was sealed in Petra, right? And then moved over when Joseph, by 28 AD, came about, and then Ruth, too, meaning the daughter of Yehoshua and Ruth, that's why she's so special. Ruth was basically the daughter of Yehoshua and Mary Magdalene. Yehoshua ben Joseph, or Emmanuel, or the descendant, right? The prophet of God. And then you had Miriam, or Magdalene, who was Lydia, who was the direct son of John the Baptist. That's why John the Baptist had to come before Yehoshua, both being prophets of the great Allah, based upon them coming from the original Moabitic line. So Ruth, being the direct daughter of her, was why she was referred to as the Moabitess, which is why the Eastern Stars have to go through the ritual and eventually have to adopt Ruth. But you are already Ruth, queen, black woman, Asiatic black woman, when you acknowledge your true nationality as a daughter of that, being that you are more. Out of them come somebody called Yosni, Josne, or Yosone, right? And this is where then the family, or what we call of Jesus, go in, because that's when you bring in Joanna, right, who was product of John, married to John and Mark, right, who both drowned. And then you get Esther, and then you get what we call the Ptolemaic line of kings out of so-called Egypt. So when we talk about the Holy Grail, or the search for the Holy Grail, we're talking about the original bloodline of Moab that was tied up in Ruth, who was the Moabitess, which means that when you take on Il, you were taking on the same Il that Yehoshua took on, you see, to become part of, again, the original empire that went all the way back to, that we can trace back to the conversations between Il and Yahweh in Psalms 82, 6-8, when we analyze that. But essentially, again, that now gets into the ecclesiastical aspect of your lineage. So what we are now dealing with is the metaphysics of the ecclesiastic, of what the metaphysicum ecclesiasticus sigillium magnum rex. The metaphysical aspect of God in the context of our adoption of His kingdom on earth as it is in heaven through our temple, which happens to be founded in Moorish science. Yahweh is Bay. Il is Elohim. So those people who worship Yahweh or take Yahweh as a name are basically taking Bay as a name, right? That's the difference between Yahweh and Yehovah or Jehovah, you see. But Il and Yahweh are of the same clan, yet Il is the one that brings the thing to Yahweh, and then Yahweh is the one who brings it then to earth. So in one of these examples of this, we would have a divine, this is from a book where a theologian is going through the Hebrew scripture and is basically trying to understand the basis of Il and Yahweh. And Il as the speaking voice, or the mind of Yahweh, or Yahweh being the speaking voice of Il. Therefore, the bays and the Ils, right? So, in the article, though, it basically says, look, now listen to who they talk about. Five. Now this is funny, it says, if verse 5 is divine speech spoken at the trial, whom does it belong? And to whom is it addressed? One possibility is that it represents the beginning of the speech of Il. In this reading, Il, the judge of the council, informs Yahweh. Now remember, when we say Il, we're talking about Ils or Elohim. When we say Yahweh, we're talking about Bay. Right? informs Yahweh, advocate of the oppressed, that his noble attempts to reform the gods, right, though well intended, are of no avail. The gods, El tells Bey, are not prepared to tend to the needs of the oppressed or to lead or to heed the words of your reproach. They refuse to take note of their obligations and are intent on walking in total darkness. Now, who are they talking about? Who are they talking about? This is a conversation between Il and Bey. And they talking about the fact that the gods don't want to listen to the words that the Beys are bringing to them. Now, who are the gods in this instance? These are the undeclared Moors, or the Boule free so-called Mason or cultic type of black people, or affluent black people, or quote-unquote black elite who know better and who will play with what the heritage is instead of really being, right? The oppressed are the undeclared as well as the 85% dumb, deaf, and blind. But when we say 85%, what we're really referring to, or what Elijah Muhammad was referring to, in my opinion, is the 85 years between 1770 and 1465 that made us dumb, deaf, and blind to our true culture, which is Islam. So right now, I'm showing improvement to you based upon this illicit conversation, or what this dude is trying to perceive from the conversation between the Eels and the Beys. It basically is going into the fact that this is our present position. After addressing Yahweh, he turns to the gods and informs them of their death sentence. Though his reading does not seem possible, it appears to us a bit strained, for it presents Il as more acutely aware than Yahweh of the imminent danger that the gods pose to the stability of the world. If that were the case, however, why didn't Il dispose of the gods long ago? If he is the one who is the most aware of the recklessness and obstinance of the gods and of the imminent catastrophe that threatens the world, why has he tolerated them so long? Indeed, why was there not a need, or why did not Yahweh rebuke them either? Because they, the gods, are our, in a sense, children. Anybody that you put on to, giving knowledge to, you become the Titan. Remember they talk about in the Greek mythologies, you had the Titans, and then the gods came and then grind the Titans' bones into dust, and then use that dust to make man. So that way man could have the essence of the Titans but never rule over the gods. So if the God also is a combination of government, order, and defense, then we have to look at this in a greater metaphysical canopy. So look at what we're saying. We're saying that the ancient Moabites who asked to come back and asked pharaohs of Egypt resulted in the coming over here of the so-called Moors from Europa, because they were Grail descendants, meaning Moabitic descendants, and a part of this great exodus back to this side of the world. And they created these guide stones, these Moabitic stones, to give reference to the trail of how to do it and the reference of who was responsible. And then we get to the kingdom of Nabatea, or Petra, that then is the culmination of where the nobility of Jesus and these people come from. Because when you read the Bible, it just seems that Jesus and them just come out of Galilee, right? But he was born in Bethlehem. Look at where Bethlehem is in distance to Petra, and you'll see the connection. So this Nabatean kingdom that they don't talk about was really an extension or protectorate under the Aksumite Empire, right? Which also had connections to the Persian Empire through the whole Mithridatic rights thing. So these people now come back to America, right? And now they settle here at the mouth of the Mississippi, based upon them receiving permission from their cousins and them from over here from time immemorial. They come over here and then they dwell, what's at the mouth of the Mississippi? We got Chicago and all of that, right? So then look what happens in Chicago years later. Mithra manifests itself in the fact that the Moor Science Temple is founded there, right? Nation of Islam was founded there. Your current president is founded there. Michael Jordan, right? Jordan, which was where Petra is in, right? Petra is in Jordan. Michael Jordan, who plays for a team called the Bulls. Mithra is the bull, right? Flies through the air. Mithra is the lord of the air, and wears red, white, and black, which were the ancestral colors of the Moabites from the Nabatean region. Now you tell me, am I bugging, or is there a greater mysticism going on in how this quantum redundancy is replaying itself in our modern cosmology, but because we are looking at it through the eyes of a 14th Amendment citizen, we are missing the forest for the trees. The greatest basketball player ever, to the point where people still buying his sneakers, right? Jordan. But look at what they had to do to him and what they did to him to domesticate him being 9 foot tall, and it said that the Moabites were basically that tall. The ones that was coming out of the Nabatean region. So we get Nabatean, we get Sabaean, we get Shebean, or Sheba. And then out of Sheba, which actually is a corruption of Seba, which is then Bled El Seba, the land of the lawless over here. So again, Moors, that's the death lesson for the night. Definitely do the knowledge to what I'm saying. There's a lot of stuff in there. And all of that relates to you now, because this, I'm showing and proving to you that you are from the direct line of Yehoshua through Ruth, the Moabitic queen, wife of John the Baptist, also known as Zadok, right? Founders of the Lydian kingdom, the first kingdom in history to ever coin money. So anybody that wants to holler at us about posting their notices on We Are Moorally Science Temple, general post site, you could email us at houseofl@hotmail.com. We'll send you the instructions and everything for that. Anybody that wants to join our Wednesday classes on, again, how the deeper aspects of nationality and how to acquire that in a timely fashion, hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com. You can also check out www.darkskull418.com, as well as www.aseer.com. Please support our site and spread the word. Any other site that you see our DVDs on are not sanctioned. So they are stealing from us and you know what I'm saying, and making you an accomplice by consent, by unknown consent, you know what I mean, in the exercise, because they don't support any lecturers that I know of in terms of these tapes that are being sold. And we need all the help we can get. So anybody wants to send any donations, you can do so at dukeoftears@gmail.com through PayPal, or again, email me through houseofl@hotmail.com as well if you want to do any lectures, workshops, readings, tarot readings, whatever. We'll have more next week. Have a great full moon. Definitely look out for the retrograde that starts on the 26th, but know that it's great for correction. Also, check out www.cookingmorewithless.com and www.blackmambaworkouts.com, as well as www.sagaassad.com. And we'll have some. Oh, also check out www.darkskull418.com. That's my baby. That's the comic book novel about all of this. So you have different ways for you to understand it. So when you apply your knowledge in the real world, you can almost look at it like a story. Because the more you look at it like that, with you as the hero in it, and your family as the noble clan in it, then you know who the real Kryptonians are. So as the Crypt Keepers, we got to wake up and arouse Lazarus. And being that we are the Eels and the Bays, the Elohims and the Yahwehs, we have the ability to do so. So love and light to you. And